Hello and welcome back to Chasing Excellence, a show about chasing what truly matters. My name is Patrick Cummings, here with my friend Ben Bergeron. How are you, sir?
Doing good, Patrick.
Good. Thanks, everybody out there, for joining us. We are bringing back something that we haven't done in a long time. We used to do HopperTalk, which was a bit of just a random hodgepodge of questions that I would find on the internet, often on Reddit, and we would just talk through 3 or 5 of them. And it was often fun. It brought us in conversations that went in strange left turns that we wouldn't normally take. So I wanted to bring them back, but I wanted to play around with it a little bit. Folks may remember the episode we did right as we were reformatting to do 2 shorter episodes a week instead of 1 longer one. We did 1 episode where we had clips from Bruce Lee, just random clips that I found on the internet that I thought would spark an interesting conversation. We haven't done that since, so I thought I would love to bring that idea into this idea of HopperTalk. What we're going to do this week is I've got 2 clips from 2 podcasts that I've listened to or watched recently. So we've got 2-minute clips from a couple of different podcasts. We're going to listen to them or watch them if you happen to be watching us. And then we're just going to see where the conversations goes. So we've got 2 clips, one from Elizabeth Gilbert, the writer, and the other from also the writer, Simon Sinek. We're going to get into those real quick. ChasingExcellence.email, get on our free newsletter list. We send out an email every single weekend with links to the shows we put out, as well as a link to a form that you can submit questions for future episodes. We also just announced the next 2 iterations of the Chase Club book club. We're going to read Build the Life You Want by Arthur Brooks and Oprah Winfrey, and 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. We want to keep those conversations exclusive to the Chase Club. So if you want to join us, we would certainly love it. I love doing the book clubs. I'm glad we're going to try to squeeze in 2 more. ChasingExcellence.email is also where you can jump into the Chase Club. Okay, without any further ado, I'm going to play the first clip. This is from a conversation Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, Big Magic, a great book called City of Girls. I think that's what it's called, City of Girls. And this is a part of her 2-minute clip from a conversation she had recently with Tim Ferriss on the Tim Ferriss podcast.
There's a story that I'm so moved and disturbed by. So Sharon Salzberg, do you know Sharon Salzberg, the meditation teacher? Mm-hmm. So she met the Dalai Lama, and she's written about this. She met the Dalai Lama on his first visit to the West. And she was in a group of people who were the first North Americans to meet him. And it was at a time when nobody really knew who he was. He wasn't like the rock star who he became. He was this obscure Tibetan monk. And of course, it took place somewhere in California, and there were some academics in the room and some spiritual writers and teachers and meditators and this sort of elect group of people who were coming to meet him. And he was speaking through a translator because he didn't speak much English at the time. And somebody in the room asked him what Tibetan Buddhism and his teachings have to say about self-hatred and how to combat self-hatred. And don't you know, that man had to talk to his translator for like 15 minutes and kept asking for the question to be repeated. He didn't understand the question. He kept thinking that he was mishearing the question because he kept saying, wait, who is the enemy? Who's the person that you're having trouble with? And of course, being like Calvinistic Westerners in the room, raised on scarcity and, your never enoughness and original sin, everybody in the room was like, no, I'm the one I hate. And he was like, this doesn't even make sense. Mm-hmm. Like what you're saying doesn't even make sense. And when he finally grasped not only that he understood that person's question and what they were talking about, but that everyone in the room shared this problem, he was so devastated. And he said, I used to think that I had a really good understanding of the workings of the human mind, but this is new to me and this is very disturbing. Like this is not okay. And essentially after that, he said, this is where we're going to start, and then that basically became his mission in the Western world.
I'm the one that I hate. That's surprising and yet not.
I think what's surprising to me was that it was so new to him. Like to the point where it took 15 minutes just to comprehend the question.
Yeah.
It was so foreign. It was so new. Just the cultural differences are so vast that which It may not be the default mode here, right? But it certainly isn't rare. And maybe we should start with the self-hate thing. I don't think it has to be hate, but a sense of unworthiness, a sense of I don't belong, a sense that I'm not loved, a sense of like inherently flawed.
Not being enough.
Yeah. We were just talking about, previous episode or whatever, parenting. And you got to think that this is where most of this stems from. I think it stems from it could stem from a number of different places, but early childhood, home experiences, trauma would be the number one thing that leads to, if parents are overly critical, if they are constantly judging the child, that's going to become their own inner voice. Obviously, if they experience true trauma where they see or are the victim of something, not unheard of. I hope that it's rare, but that not even be a thing in their Tibetan society, what pops up to me is like, wow, we have so much to learn. Like we have, and maybe it's not learn, or maybe it's we've been so distracted. There's been some sort of toxicity that has been injected into our homes. I think that's that childhood and that trauma and that parenting is one of the ways that we could come to this place of self-hate, or this feeling of I'm inherently flawed, I don't belong, or I'm not loved. There are certainly others. We talked about this in other recent episodes as well. And, just the comparison thing. If you're constantly judging yourself against other people's incredible achievements, you again think that, well, man, I don't belong. I'm not good. I'm just not good enough. I can't do this. And that leads to, why aren't you good? And you become self-hating. And it's just like, it's against these unrealistic ideals that don't truly exist. In Tibetan culture, they don't reward, they don't acknowledge, they don't revere things the way we do, whether it's monetary achievement, fame, celebrity, which are by definition incredibly rare. But yet we see it everywhere now. So we go, well, I can't do that. I don't look as good as her. I haven't achieved as much as him. And we beat ourselves up for that. Maybe that's another way for like it's because self-hate is probably extreme, but we beat ourselves up. I think a lot of us could relate to that. Another word for that is probably just like a little bit of victim mentality. Why is this happening to me? Maybe it's their fault, but dang it, I don't like this about me. Where else could this come from? Experiencing failures or rejection over and over again, instead of taking the competitive mindset or the realistic approach. If you have a pessimistic or victim mindset, you're going to start to beat yourself up a lot instead of learning and growing from those experiences. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, a frequency illusion, a confirmation bias. See, I suck. See, I can't do anything. Maybe the other one that pops up is perfectionism, where we're striving for this perfect ideal state and we constantly come up against it. It's the gap in the gain thing that we talked about recently. If you're constantly living in there, you're like, well, I'm never going to get there. But it's a constantly moving horizon. Like you're not supposed to get there. When you're 16, you have this picture of what you want your life to look like. And then by the time you're 26, that's moved. It's gone even farther. By the time you're 46, it's moved again. In business, we call it the 3-year picture. In the 3-year picture, you rewrite every year. You never, ever, ever get there. You're constantly moving the yardstick, but just to create a vision. So we're all rowing in the same direction. But if you don't realize that, you are constantly living in this gap, and you could beat yourself up a lot. You could feel like you're unworthy. You could feel like you're not as good as everybody else, which to me goes like, I relate to all those things I just said. Like all those things hit home for me. All of those things that I just listed, I can relate to those things. And to imagine an entire society, an entire culture that pretty much is void of those things, to the point where you don't have any a sense of, I mean, essentially it's like insecurities. Like I have an insecurity that I'm not good enough. That's what blows me away, is not so much that we have those things, is that there's a real place on planet Earth with human beings that don't have that.
Don't. Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, those are all social. Those are all cultural. Those are not part of the default human state.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I think about, we just mentioned the book we're reading inside the book club, Build the Life You Want by Arthur Brooks. And there's a sentence that if I could highlight it 6 times, I would have. But it was, unhappy people make great consumers. And I think about that with what you're saying, because I think we, yes, there is the parental influence of us as young people, not being good enough. You're not getting good enough grades. You're not good enough at soccer. You're not going to get into that school unless you X, Y, Z. And then we get out of that. We get out of that influence of our parents. And then we get shuttled into the world where everybody is trying to sell you something based on a lack that you have. And in order for them to sell you the thing that they're trying to sell you, they first have to convince you that you are in fact lacking. And so we grow up in a place where we're getting all of this judgment put upon us. And then we become adults and enter into an even bigger society that is quite literally built around convincing you that you are lacking a thing and that you can buy it and that would satisfy you, which of course is so very rarely the case.
We have just been so ingrained in more efficiency, more production, more growth, more product, more buying, consumption. And when you start to go, okay, how much has this influenced not just the economy, not just the American dream, but there's more out there. And if you're not grinding, if you're not getting it, you're insufficient. You are not doing everything that you should be doing. And so you should not be happy with yourself, with your life. Go and do and create more. When they do happiness studies on countries, I believe Mexico is one of the happiest countries in the world. And there's 3 or 4 countries, like third world countries in Africa, that are in the top 10. And the US is near the bottom. It's like, whoa, we are the wealthiest, one of the wealthiest, if not like average, like means of living is crazy. Yet we are, the cliches now, right? Like overfed, depressed, unsociable, like all the other things. So I start to think about now this idea of the machine, and we are cogs in the machine. Our happiness is not part of the machine running efficiently.
All right, we're going to wrap up that one. We'll be back with a Simon Sinek clip in 2 minutes. First, let's say thanks to a few sponsors. We're brought to you by a new sponsor, Helix Sleep. You ready to transform your sleep experience? Well, you can with a mattress from Helix Sleep. Head over to helixsleep.com/excellence and get 20% off your mattress order. That's helixsleep.com/excellence for an exclusive offer. We've been sleeping on a Helix mattress for over a month now. And by we, I don't mean you and I, Ben, but you've been sleeping on one as well. And I'll be honest, I never really fully appreciated how a mattress can affect sleep quality until now. But as you know, quality sleep is crucial for recovery, well-being, and overall sanity. My favorite part of the process was the quiz they gave you at the start to help you ensure you ended up with the exact mattress you need and want to optimize your sleep. It takes just a few minutes, but saves you all sorts of guessing on which mattress to choose from. Ben, I know you guys have been loving your Helix mattress over there.
Screw the ad read, screw the copy. I have never been on a mattress like this.
Yeah.
It's so good. We set it up, Heather and I, and we were like, whoa, this is so good. And we had a good mattress before.
Yeah.
And it was every single night that I get in the thing now, it's like, this is incredible.
Yep. helixsleep.com/excellence for that 20% discount. We're also brought to you by Sifox Health. If you're serious about optimizing your health, then knowing your biomarkers are an important tool in your toolkit. That's why we are excited to introduce you to Sifox Health. Learn more at sifoxhealth.com/excellence. That's SIPHOX health.com/excellence to save 20%. What is Sifox? They offer an at-home blood test that's both comprehensive and cost-effective, the best of both worlds. You can collect your sample with just a few drops of blood from the comfort of your home, avoiding clinic visits and long waits. Their test focuses on 17 essential biomarkers, giving you a complete health overview. And what's more, it's affordable. They've slashed the cost of blood work by over 88%, making it accessible for everyone to track their health regularly. With Sifox, you can measure important health markers like vitamin D, cortisol, testosterone, giving you the insights you need to boost your energy, focus, and overall well-being. Plus, you can combine these insights with data from your fitness tracker to get actionable recommendations. So take control of your health journey today. Visit sifoxhealth.com/excellence to get 25% off. That's SIPHOX health.com/excellence. Okay, let us jump into our second clip. Again, this is from Simon Sinek. This is from a conversation that he had recently with Trevor Noah. Trevor Noah, the former host of The Daily Show. So let's listen.
Our understanding of addiction largely comes from an experiment that was done, I think, in like the 50s or 60s, where they put a rat in a cage. There was one thing of water where it was plain water and one thing that was laced with drugs.
Right.
And in short order, the rat discovered the drug-laced beverage and loved it, drank more and more until it killed itself. And our understanding of addiction largely comes from this study. There was a guy named, I think his name was Bruce Alexander, who said, hold on, it's flawed. The whole study is flawed because rats, like us, are social animals. And we put a rat by itself in solitude. Of course it became an addict. But that's not what you're supposed to do with social animals. So he recreated the experiment where he put, first of all, he put lots of rats in the cage.
No way.
So it was social, community. They put wheels and mazes, and they were having kids and babies, and two waters, a plain water and the drug-laced water. And they could see from the data, they knew which ones, and they all tried enough of the drug-laced water to get addicted.
Right.
But they didn't. Their taking in of the water declined, and they only drank the plain water, which starts to give evidence that if we have close friendships and if we live in community, perhaps we're less susceptible to all addiction. And I know that there's a lot being talked about the addiction of social media, the addiction of cell phones, which is true. Which is true. It is a highly dopamine-producing device, and that it's causing loneliness. And I would argue that if we worked on the friendships, and more important, if we taught our children how to be friends, that perhaps they are less likely to get addicted. And I think, and I think. So when you talk about what's the global responsibility, we're teaching people how to do everything. We're finding the hacks for everything. The one thing we aren't doing is the old-fashioned, hard, slow thing of making friends.
You and I mean, obviously we've got one of our 5 factors is connect. Of course, connect with ourselves, connect with each other, and connect with nature. It's admittedly the thing that you and I, when we have these conversations, both admit to being not particularly good at, this connect with others thing. I don't think we're alone in that. We had a conversation recently about parents under stress, and some 60 to 70% of parents and 50% of adults claim that loneliness is at least part of their life. And so that's the first thing that pops out to me in this is his point one, that we've got coaching for everything, but we don't particularly have coaching for how to be a good friend. We don't know how to do that. We think that it's one of those things that in some strange way, it's kind of like running or breathing. Oh, we know how to do that because it's just natural. I know how to run, except when you find somebody who can actually coach you on how to run, you realize I was running like an idiot. And it feels like friendship is similar. Of course, I know how to be a friend to somebody. And then if somebody comes in and says, yeah, but do you do this and this? And I notice you were doing that. You realize, I have no idea how to be a good friend. I don't actually know what that means or what that looks like or how to do it better.
I heard Simon Sinek talk about a great example of friendship. Did you catch that?
Go ahead. I think I know what you mean.
It was Michael. It was the guy from 11 Madison Park. Wrote Unreasonable Hospitality. Will Guidara is the guy's name, I think. And he's like, he is a phenomenal friend. To exemplify what that looks like one of his friends recently lost someone very close. I can't remember if it was a mother, a spouse, or something like that. He sent him a text and said,
I remember the story now. Yep, keep going.
I know you're grieving right now. I know how much this relationship meant to you and how hurt you must be. I don't want to take up any of your time, but if you want to talk, I will call you tomorrow morning at 9:30 in the morning. If you don't feel like talking, just don't answer. And I'll do that until you tell me not to. And if you don't feel like talking, I won't take it personally at all. I understand that this must be tough for you. And then he proceeded to call him the next morning at 9:30 and didn't answer. The next morning at 9:30. And after 4, 5, 6 days, he picked up and he has since continued to call him. He's extremely busy, runs the most successful, or the best restaurant in the world, written books and amongst a ton of other things, has carved out a time at 9:30 in his morning every single day to call this friend and has not stopped. It's been going on for a year plus now. He shared that as an example of that is
what it looks like.
What it looks like.
Yeah.
I am
and
here
I
for
do believe
you.
that was part of that conversation.
But I believe that is what friendship is. Friendship is an expression of love. And love is when you do something for someone else, not looking for anything in return. I think that's as good a definition as I can find for it. And to your point, to Simon Sinek's point, there is no one teaching anyone how to do that for other people. Forget about teaching, even like bringing to light of like, this is what friendship looks like. And now more so than ever, with people removing the friction and the scariness of true social interactions, which people would then grow and learn from. That's what happens when you get challenged. People are going to get worse and worse from this. There was a recent stat I came across which showed the percentage of the ways that people meet and start dating. It went decade by decade. And for the last 100 years. So in the 1920s, number one was through friends. Number two was coworkers, the workplace. Number three was church. It went down the list to about 12 of them. And they were all fairly balanced, with 22% being the high and 8 or 9% being the low. As you go through the decades now, 99% of people meet dating online. And everything else is less than 1%. You don't develop the social skills. The challenging part of like, what's the right words to say to somebody? If they say this back to me, how do I respond? And working through it in real time and growing this skill, this ability of social interaction. Instead, it's swipe right, click a button. Did they go back to me? That's just one example of the social parts that have been stripped away from the framework of our existence. And friendship's been the same thing. Now it's text messages, group text, the in real life stuff, the true empathy, compassion is not where it was before. You know, the way I did for friends was I'm going to ride my bike around town and look for a house with 5 or 6 other bikes that I recognize outside of it. And then you knock on the door and the parent's there and you go, hey, is Johnny here? And you go, yeah. And he's with his friends. Oh, cool. Awesome. And you go downstairs and you're like, I'm not sure if you're like, welcome. And you go, hey guys. And like, hey, you know, all of that, the meeting and being friends. Grumpy old white guys talking about the
good old days.
The good old days. Exactly. It's hard to not draw the correlates between that and the loneliness, the anxiety, the depression that's kind of running rampant now. The other part of this is, okay, we have connections as one of our 5 factors. Why? because it matters. Why does it matter? The one we lean on the most, the Harvard study, is really well known now and we've talked about a lot. But there's coping mechanisms built into friendships where you can seek advice, you can share problems. There is this back and forth where you're not by yourself. That allows you to offload some things. You get to have emotions with another person. And maybe that's what Simon Sinek's talking about, is we're not teaching people how to be friends. Mm-hmm. We're not teaching them how to be vulnerable, how to share their emotions, how to connect, how to create a sense of belonging, how to do things for other people, not looking for anything in return. I truly believe, you used this a couple episodes ago, but like it's the medicine, against stress. I think it was the parenting one.
Yep.
Friendship's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a medicine against emotional dysregulation. It helps create emotional maturity, which is feeling the right emotion at the right time, the right amount. Mm-hmm. Like emotions are good. Emotions are healthy. Friends allow you to experience those right emotions at the right time, the right amount, if they're healthy friendships. Mm-hmm. If we are emotionally mature and emotionally regulated, the chances of us falling prey to addiction to fill some void, I don't have the data for it, but empirically it just seems like that would be mitigated in a pretty massive way.
I think one of the things that's interesting in this concept of not teaching our children how to do this, and really just not teaching ourselves, is that I don't know that friendship is something that people consider a skill. We know people who are really good friends, and we sort of say, wow, they're just so good at that. They're always thinking of other people. It's a gift that they have, that they're always paying attention, and they remember birthdays and however a person might define a good friend. But taking two steps back and saying, what if friendship was a skill? Well, if friendship is a skill, then you can learn a skill. Skills are learnable. That's in fact what makes them skills. And to me, that's just a really interesting idea. Say, okay, well, if friendship is a skill, then break that down into pieces. What are the pieces of being a good friend? Okay, that, and that. Well, I can learn that, and that. Honestly, I don't know that I've ever thought about friendship as a skill, but I think it is.
What are some of the things that you think make up the good friend?
I think back to a little bit of Build the Life You Want. One of the things he writes about is this idea of, in order to move towards happiness, we have to spend more time, energy, and effort on other people than we do on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think the big ingredient in being a good friend is, first, you've got to be not so self-absorbed to be spending so much of your energy and effort thinking about me, and replacing that with thinking and attending other people, an outward focus versus an inward focus. I think that's a big part of it. I think the people who are really good friends do that well.
I love that.
And admittedly, I think partly why I suck at it to the degree that I do is because I spend a lot of time inward focused, right? And not outward focused. And I think there's a degree to which it's like you can only do one or the other, at least to a large degree. You can't do both at the same time.
I think it's such a good call out. I think it's a great place to start that conversation of what it means to be a great friend. And it's a thing that once you see it, it's hard to unsee it. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time for making people aware of this, but listen to conversations. Most conversations. It's just people going around the circle, and they start the conversation with, I did this and like this. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. It's not always but my brother. And they tell the story about them. And it's like, oh yeah, my neighbor. And it's like, oh my gosh, I did. And it's like, no one's actually connecting. No one's actually doing anything other than waiting for their turn to share their thing about them. Mm-hmm. The good friend in that group would ask a question that would further the conversation and understanding. No way, really? Wait, what? They did what? With who? Where?
Yep.
I think that, to your point, which is really, I think it's fascinating, is I think a lot of us go to a inwardly focus, and it's not always out of I'm the best or cockiness or anything. It very much can be the opposite. Mm-hmm. Insecurities. It's I need to tell my story so they feel like I'm, and it's funny how that is counter to what actually happens. So Simon Sinek is such a good presenter. And I just love the way he says water. It's like he doesn't have any accent except for like 6 words.
I'll be interested because he's clearly working on something in this space because I've seen him talk about this in a number of different places. So I'm excited to see what he is in fact.
I think he's actually writing a book with Will Guidara. I think that's
fascinating.
I think that's what's happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think maybe he did talk about that elsewhere. Anyways, so looking forward to that. We'll put that on our book club list as well. All right, folks, we're going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening. Again, chasingexcellence.email, get on the free newsletter list, and or join us in the Chase Club for book clubs that we've got coming at the end of the year. Ben, thank you so much as always. We'll be back soon for a brand new episode of Chasing Excellence.